It's whatever you
Oh, I can do it from.
I think you
I can spotlight it.
It's great.
I do. Do you want to do it? We got 5 minutes.
Yeah, right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
But yes. Yeah.
See Jeannie like that?
We'll get started momentarily here. We're just waiting for a few people at the sign-in desk. Okay, we're going to get started. I'd like to welcome everyone to the public hearing on local law number 2 of 2021, proposed local law. That would add Article 14, which is solar energy systems, to Chapter 149 of the Monroe Town Code. I want to thank everyone for being here this evening and for participating either in person or via Zoom. And we initially noticed the public hearing via Zoom. And so as we move forward with the process, we'll be alternating between individuals who wish to speak on Zoom and those that are here in person. So at this time, I'd like to introduce the board. My name is Todd Kuzniers. I'm the town supervisor. The board members here with me are John Hogan on my right, Kyle Noonan, Alan Van Tassel, and John Donahue. On John's left, we have co-attorney for the town of Monroe, Malcolm O'Hara. And we're also joined by Clerk Leanne McCabe. From my office, who will be helping us this evening is Jeffrey Cruz. He will be handling everything on Zoom, and he will also be responsible for the time. Just want to give a quick overview before we actually open up the public hearing. About 2 years ago, the town began receiving inquiries from commercial solar developers as to the interest that the town may have in relation to commercial solar development. Shortly after those initial inquiries, I met with property owners and representatives of these developers, which include Boralex, United States Light Energy, Renua, as well as some others that are not actually actively engaged in with our property owners here in town at this time. As a result, there were town board discussions to see if there was interest in exploring this issue in greater detail. However, currently town zoning only allows commercial solar electric generation infrastructure in the town's industrial park, which is located off of Bluebird Road. It's approximately 243 acres. And of that 243 acres, approximately 110 acres is considered developable acreage. Then the pandemic, COVID-19 hit, kind of ground things to a halt here at Town Hall. We remained operational, however, we were closed to the public, and then we began conducting meetings via Zoom. Since there was interest on the part of the town board to consider allowing commercial solar arrays in the R5 or agricultural zone in the town, which is also referred to as the Ag District, and you can see it up on the wall here to your right. The bold black line all the way around up there is the perimeter of the R5 or the Ag District. Obviously, everything north of that is still within the town of Monroe. We're surrounded by the Hudson River on 3 sides. And so the town board began holding workshops via Zoom in September of 2020 to discuss the possible amendment to the town zoning ordinance. As I indicated earlier, currently under town zoning, you cannot place commercial arrays anywhere in the town except in the industrial park. We had the first, as I indicated, workshop, I think it was September. And then we had 5 more additional workshops in 2020 and 2021 for a total of 6. Once the proposal was in draft form, the amendment was provided to NYSERDA, which is the New York State Energy and Research Development Authority, also to the Town Planning Board and the Town Zoning Board of Appeals for review and comment. At which point it came back to the town board and was released to the public for review and comment. At this time, adoption of the draft local law, if unamended, would be a zoning increase of the available acreage here in the town of Monroe. That would permit commercial solar arrays. That would increase the total acreage in the town from 243 acres to just under 6,400 acres. And if you look at this map up here, you'll see all the dark areas, the shaded areas within the district are those areas under this proposal which would be allowed to have solar arrays as limited by proposed local law. So at this time, I'd like to ask the town council, Malcolm O'Hara, just to provide a brief overview of the various aspects of the local law.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. As we said, this is intended as an additional article in the town code to address solar energy systems. It contains a statement of purpose, it contains a section of definitions, it contains a section which is a description of the permitting process, and then it sets forth the standards for different types of solar systems. And there are 3 different types of solar systems that are defined in the article. There is one provision for abatement and decessioning of the solar systems under certain conditions and after certain time periods. And then there's a section which deals with a pilot program in lieu of taxes. As the supervisor said, we're opening a public hearing tonight. Because of the notice requirements and the change in the protocol of the state, the public hearing is not going to be closed. It will be continued for another date.
Thank you, Malcolm. So with that, Section 20 of the general or the municipal home rule law prescribes a 5-day newspaper notice requirement, and I'd like to ask the clerk to affirm that that has occurred.
Yes.
Thank you. And would you please read the notice in the record?
There are actually two notices, so I'll read the notice that was published first. On June 19th, 2021, Town of Monroe notice of public hearing to consider adoption of local law. Notice is hereby given pursuant to section 20 of the Municipal Home Rule Law of the State of New York, for the public hearing will be held by the Town Board of the Town of Monroe on June 29th, 2021 at 6:00 p.m. at the Town Municipal Complex located at 351 Reynolds Road, Monroe, New York, for the purpose of considering the adoption of local law number 1 of 2021. The public will be able to fully observe the video conference meeting and will be able to comment during the public hearing. The video conference is available as follows: https://uso2web.zoom.us/j/885-921-92250. To dial in, please call 1-929-205-6099 with meeting code 885-921-92250. The link will also be on the town's website at www.townofmonroe.org. If adopted, local law number 1 of 2021 would add Article 14, solar energy systems, to Chapter 149 of the Monroe Town Code. Written comments on local law number 1 of 2021 can be submitted to the town clerk up to the time of the public hearing. A copy of proposed local law number 1 of 2021 can be obtained at the Monroe Town Municipal Complex and on the town's website. And then on June 29th, it was republished, and also the local law number changed because local law number 1 was adopted before this one came out, so it then became local law number 2. Town of Monroe amended notice of public hearing to consider adoption of local law. Given the expiration of the state of emergency on June 24th, 2021, and the expiration of all executive orders, please be advised that the following location change has been made for the solar energy systems public hearing for June 29th, 2021. Notice is hereby given pursuant to section 20 of the Municipal Home Rule Law of the State of New York, for the public hearing will be held by the Town Board of the Town of Monroe on June 29th, 2021 at 6 p.m. at the Town Municipal Complex located at 351 Reynolds Road, Monroe, New York, and via streaming at https://us02web.zoom.us/j/885-921-92250 for the purpose of considering the adoption of local law number 2 of 2021. If adopted, local law number 2 of 2021 would add Article 14, solar energy systems, to Chapter 149 of the Monroe Town Code. Written comments on local law number 2 of 2021 can be submitted to the town clerk up and through the time of the public hearing. Comments will be accepted in person at the hearing and via Zoom during the meeting. A copy of proposed local law number 2 of 2021 can be obtained at the Monroe Town Municipal Complex and on the town's website.
Thank you, Leanne. Before we open it up, just want to set the ground rules for this evening. We intend, as you heard from council, to leave the public hearing open. We'll not be closing it, so we will continue to receive comment. Again, we'll be taking no action this evening, and we will alternate, as I indicated, between those on Zoom and those in person regarding testimony. By resolution, each person will have 5 minutes to speak. When there's 1 minute remaining, Jeffrey will be tracking time. He will indicate that you have 1 minute remaining. All comments are to remain germane to the proposed local law or solar power in general. If there's any deviation or personal characterizations, we'll move on to the next speaker. So with that, please speak into the microphone. State your name and address for the record, whether you're a Town of Monroe resident, and it would be very helpful to the board if you also state whether you live in the Ag District or outside the Ag District. So with that, I will open the public hearing. And do we have somebody on Zoom that wishes to speak at this time? If not, we'll move on to in-person. First individual is Rachel McDermott from 180 Old West Road. And I'll just ask anybody addressing the board is please speak in the microphone. because those individuals that are watching on Zoom will not be able to hear the comments unless they use the microphone. Floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening. My speech is just over 3 minutes, we'll get to it. Rachel McDermott, 180 Old West Road, brand new resident, and we are in the ag district. So tonight I want to voice my concern about the overly restricted draft solar law, which took 2 years to come to. Specifically, I oppose the restriction of solar development on prime farmland, soils of state-wide importance, and soils that are arbitrarily deemed important by the town board. I oppose this restriction because I believe that solar arrays and farmland can live harmoniously with each other and provide complementary benefits to our community and to our future farmers, including preserving our soil health and fertility on all classifications of farmland for future generations and sequestering millions of tons of carbon for future generations, providing our community with cleaner, cheaper power, providing an increased tax base to support our school programs, fire departments, and other public needs, and providing passive income to our farmers, allowing them to reinvest in their land, buildings, equipment, and family businesses. And I'm not sure if you all know this, but most of the farmland in production in Moreau is classified as farming or of statewide importance. And I fear that what's left would be classified as important by the board. The draft solar law therefore discriminates against an entire group of people in our town, specifically farmers, or in all reality, former farmers. And please note that over 70% of the town's farmland is leased to farmers in neighboring towns, meaning that almost all of the value derived from these operations are realized by other communities and not realized by us. The average dollar per acre paid to a landowner for farming operations doesn't cover the cost of property taxes, but a solar pilot program will provide our residents with significant tax base that will fund benefits for everybody in the future. And if we haven't all been widely aware of this, our world that we live in today is so dependent on natural resources to fuel our lives that we can't get to work or to the grocery store without touching something that relies on fossil fuel. And in our own town, we allow National Grid to compress natural gas from the port and inject it into the transmission pipeline. Time is running out before carbon fuels dry up and we can't reverse climate change. And in fact, I believe that over the next 20 years, the cost of growing, harvesting, processing, and delivering our food will be so high that family farmers will be extinct. There aren't that many production farmers left in the town around. Corporations like Amazon, Walmart, Alibaba, and Tesla will grow your food and you will have no control over your supply chain. But if we amend the law and start small and local, we can change that. And I imagine a world where farmers have the choice and the right to diversify their operations into multiple income streams through solar development. I believe that it would allow them to reinvest in their businesses and create local niche marketplaces that transparently share where, how, and when our food is grown and how it gets to market. And I imagine a world where a farmer can operate independently from oil and gas, and where farmers can generate power that you use in your house to clean your clothes, to cook your food, and to bathe your babies. Farming is changing, and I don't think we should exclude farming the sun as part of it. And I sincerely urge that the board reflect on the current state of the town's dying farm industry and put forward a law that allows each of us to benefit from the solar value stack that has the potential to secure our farmland, our open spaces, our food supply, and our power needs for generations beyond our own. Thank you.
The next individual on Zoom that we have is Matt Clear.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, my name is Matt Clear. Presently live in Longwood, Florida, but was born and raised in South Glens Falls, so I always call it home. My wife and I own about 25 acres of land on Reynolds Road in the town of Moreau. We purchased the land years ago for other intentions, but life happened and those plans changed, unfortunately. Presently, we hay the property and sell the hay, which helps offset taxes and expenses and such. And by profession, I'm an architect and senior partner in a national architectural firm. And I am a LEED accredited professional. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's the standard measurement, if you will, for sustainable design in our business. As was mentioned by the previous speaker, you know, our industry and our country, for that matter, is kind of singularly focused on reducing our dependency on fossil fuels. New and existing buildings are the largest consumers of energy in our world, and solar installations on farmland in lieu of more houses and more buildings is a win-win. Farmers can use a portion of their land for solar leases to offset rising agricultural costs. I do not believe that solar arrays in and of themselves present any soils or environmental concern, and have reviewed legal documents to be certain that our property would be restored to its original state once an installation reaches its useful life and removed. So for me, I guess, you know, using the property for clean solar as a potential revenue bridge is an advantage, but using the property to reduce dependency on fossil fuels and nuclear power is also, you know, walking the walk as a design professional. So it is my ask that, you know, restrictions in the proposed law be reconsidered so all farmers and all property owners, you know, with farming intentions can take advantage of these opportunities with their land. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. If I could add, because it'll just add to the evening, we have a growing list of speakers. If you could hold reaction to the speaker's comments to the end, that'd be fantastic. Next individual I have listed is Sarah J. Linney.
My name is Sarah Linehan. I live at 246 Gansford Road in the town of Monroe, and I reside in the Ag District. I support conserving and protecting our natural resources and the scenic beauty of the farmland in the town of Monroe. I encourage the town board to move forward with the current proposal that limits the use of solar panels on prime soils.
Thank you. Next, anybody else on Zoom at this time? Who was that?
Catherine.
Just Catherine. Catherine, who is with us via Zoom, the floor is yours.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Great, thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. My name is Catherine Kurtz, and I own land on 195 Burt Road, and the address is 253 to 265 Gansford Road in the town of Monroe in the Ag District. I grew up in the Ag District in the town of Monroe, and we own roughly 200 acres presently being farmed for crops and livestock. Our property happens to be fully adjacent to the Killian property for the proposed solar site. As someone who is directly impacted by this proposal, I'm appalled at the support for the visual pollution of Monroe that will greatly diminish and devalue the vitality of our agricultural district. While I support the use of renewable energy sources, solar should only be placed in industrial and commercially zoned lands, not New York's prime farmland. As New York is currently in the top 20 most threatened states for farmland conversion, we as a community have a responsibility to protect these lands. I strongly encourage our elected officials who are charged with upholding the US and New York State Constitution when swearing to their oath of office will continue their obligation to not only conserve and protect its agricultural resources and scenic beauty, but improve and develop agricultural land specifically for the production of food and agricultural products. I am 100% against the destruction of the agricultural district into commercial electric generation facilities. I strongly encourage the board to keep solar out of the ag district in the town of Monroe. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next individual is in person, and that is Mary Ellen Kuzners.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I am Mary Ellen Kuzners. I live in the Ag District at 238 Gansford Road. I'm here tonight because I want to establish my opposition to the proposal to open the Ag District land to solar development. As I was preparing for tonight, I was doing a lot of reading on the topic, and there are so many issues that come up, but to me, there's really just a couple that I have time to speak about that I see as the most important. The first one is right now in the town of Monroe, solar arrays are allowed only in the industrial zone. As far as I know, the industrial zone is not fully subscribed for solar, thus I think it's unwise to proceed and jump ahead of the need into the ag district. Second thing, many times people in support of this talk about ways to preserve farmland, using solar as a way to preserve the farmland. I respectfully disagree with that. To me, the best way to preserve farmland is to farm the land. When we talk about putting solar arrays, commercial sized solar arrays on farmland, you need to think about how hard it is to keep farmland in production. It's not something that happens easily. Tilling, liming, fertilizing, seeding, mowing, these things have to happen constantly, consistently, just to maintain the status quo. I fail to see how installing major infrastructure onto large portions of agricultural land, which has to limit the opportunity of farmers to work on that land, and not just for a short period of time, but literally for a quarter of a century at a time, limiting the opportunities to keep that land in the business that it should be in. I will say that the public relations firms involved in supporting solar have done a wonderful job. Whoever coined the phrase solar farm deserves a medal for their business. Who can oppose putting a solar farm in the ag district? It sounds like the perfect fit. But I think what we need to be aware of is they're not farms. They're power plants. They're renewable power, but they are still power producing plants taking up potentially thousands of acres of farmland in the town, and that's just in Monroe. When I look at some of the published information online, things about like Boralex, for instance, the company that is most in the news in this area. Big company, successful company, started in 1990, huge in France, huge in Canada, getting to be gigantic in New York State. So many links to projects, to websites, to news stories about the tens of thousands of acres that they have leased and that they have in production. Great, right? Big pictures of sunny fields, big pictures of smiling people, smiling goats, right? It all looks wonderful. But what I don't see, what I have not found any evidence of, is the end game here. I haven't read any stories about what happens when the leases are over at the end of 20 years, 25 years, pushing out in 5-year increments. How exactly is this infrastructure removed? And where exactly are these thousands of solar panels going to go? Right now, New York State has no facilities for recycling any of these solar panels. And just to add to my concern about this, when it comes time to dispose of thousands of solar panels, I'm concerned about where we're gonna look in this town, which part of town we're gonna look at to put in a solid waste facility. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual, I don't think anybody in Zoom at this time. I have a maybe listed for Bobby Spalding. She is declined. I have a maybe for Matt Long.
Yeah, I'll speak. That's all right. Okay. My name is Matt Longman. I'm not from Moreau. I live in New York, and I work for a solar development company. My company is actually looking at a piece of property on Silkridge Road in Moreau, and we've done quite a bit of evaluating the area around and the utility infrastructure here to see where there might be suitable areas to erect solar arrays. I don't have much to add to the debate, just that the way the law is currently constructed with prime soils and soils of statewide importance and others, it really would restrict severely any solar development on farmland. So I just wanted to add that in and mention it from the solar developer's perspective that it really is influential.
Thank you. Who do we have on Zoom?
Karen Himes.
Karen Himes, the floor is yours. Karen, can you hear us?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, I cannot tell you that I vehemently opposed the two women who spoke earlier about blocking the solar energy from the farms. I grew up in an agricultural district in the town of Moreau on 73 acres. I currently still live in the town of Moreau. And we do have, like the earlier speaker, Rachel mentioned, a responsibility to the earth and to our children and grandchildren to step away from the fossil fuels and have clean, green energy. And the farmers none of the farmers who have been approached are looking at using all of their land for solar panels or for solar farms. So that's a mischaracterization, okay? They could still farm while the solar panels are up, okay? And they could farm afterwards. However, if they cannot maintain their farms, and these are farms that have been in families for generations, the land will be broken up and sold to developers, and then this whole prime farmland idea will be gone forever. This is a way that farmers can harvest crops in the soil, their livestock, and harness solar energy. I think it is absolutely wrong to leave them out of this opportunity and to seal the destruction of their farms, particularly some that are generational. I absolutely think it should be open to anywhere in the town.
Thank you for your comments. Next individual we have is Laura Killian.
Hi, Laura Killian, 169 Dirt Road, Town Row. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I'm going to repeat the intention that we had 2 years ago, which is to preserve our farmland, to bring agritourism into the area, back into the area, because we used to have field trips for the South Benswell schools. I would like to allow people to tour the farm because we have beautiful views of Vermont and the Snook Hill via snowshoe. My daughter shows cows and would like to continue to do that and raise cows, which can be done dual purposely from solar on the property. I would like to speak to the solar panels being left and disintegrated with nowhere to go. That is something that can be placed in a contract in escrow to be utilized, to be recycled. I believe it's a win-win for the town. I believe it's a win-win for the solar company and a win-win for families. I too love the views. I don't want to look at solar panels. I don't expect my neighbors to look at solar panels, and most of the neighbors on Clark Road, River Road, and 197 that we've spoken to that are affected have given their opinions of where it is and have been on board with supporting it versus having the land developed and forever tainted. I would like to see the verbiage in the solar law that was drafted with that prime farmland removed so that we can continue for generations to come. I believe in loving thy neighbor. I think I know who coined that term, loving thy neighbor. I appreciate Mr. Van Tassel, Mr. Donahue, Mr. Hogan, and Mr. Noonan who came to the neighbor to talk to us, to hear us, even if they didn't agree with us, to give feedback. I appreciate that. I am in deep gratitude for hearing us out. I understand other people's opinions and I value that, but they didn't purchase this land. Joe Killian did. He's my father-in-law. The family welcomed me in. They have had this in generations from their family in Fort Edward, and I believe they deserve the right to continue to farm, the right to honor Mother Nature. And I hope that everybody can be in their hearts and see that there is a win-win to this, and it should not just be somebody or something dictating what somebody in this community does. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to the next in-person testimony. And it is Chris Barker.
Thank you. Chris Barr and I own property on 148 Washburn Road. It's been in my family for many generations, dating back to the 1800s. I disagree with the assertion that was made earlier that harvesting sunlight is not solar farming. If you think about it, every farmer in this room is harvesting sunlight currently through the grass, the corn that they grow. Where's it get its energy? It gets it from the sun. Where's that energy go? It goes into the food that we eat, it goes into the steak that I enjoy, it goes into the eggs that I enjoy consuming. That's harvesting sunlight. I want to do it in a way that my great-grandfather didn't have available to him. The technology did not exist 100 years ago. We're fortunate to live in an era and a time where that technology does exist, and we have the ability to harvest from above as well as below. We live in our lifetime, certainly our children's, we're going to see the drastic shift from fossil fuel to green energy. We're at the beginning of it now, you see mandates for electric vehicles and more green power as we attempt to slow down and stave off a planet that's getting ever hotter every year. I think the town board has a unique opportunity right now, rather than talk about what we're against, what we're for, being for property rights. I have a hard time understanding how me putting solar panels on my property is going to impact anyone sitting in this room negatively. It won't be viewed by anybody. I have the Northway as a barrier. I have a transfer station as a barrier. And I have 3 neighbors that are categorically for this project all day long. Another neighbor is moving. You have an opportunity to embrace property rights. You have an opportunity to embrace technology that, whether we like it or not, is coming. It's coming. And we can either be part of that and be in front of it, or we can play catch up over the years to come and say, oh, wow, you know what, maybe we should have been part of that. At the same time, protecting the vast majority of beautiful farmland that we do have in this town that is still viable and will be viable if we manage it correctly years and generations from now. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you. Next individual, anybody on Zoom at this time? Next individual was Ken Kurtz.
Thank you for the time. I'm Ken Kurtz. That was my wife on Zoom, so I'll probably not argue with her position if I want to have a good meal tonight. My story is a little different. I didn't grow up here, but my kids have. We live further south. I grew up in the city. But I fell in love with this community, this township. And the way I fell in love with it was because it was a part of my life that I never knew. The gorgeous scenic beauty is very different than growing up in Flushing, New York, and watching a horrible Mets team play for a lot of years. But it grew on, and it grew on our family, and we got to watch a family that became family, friends and family, that worked for generations on farmland. And it gave me and my family a new perspective about what it's like to have an appreciation for some rare commodities, what it's like to really work. And it's not easy. I've been up here for 25 years. I've been a landowner now for over 15 years. And I want to continue to invest in this community. But I didn't come to invest in a community that is going to be industrialized. I do think there's a use for solar power done properly. There's regulations for it. It should be in the industrialized areas or the commercialized areas. I'm not opposed to solar power for farmers or residents to be able to power their own farmlands or their own residents. But building power plants is not what I intended to invest in. I would not buy property if I knew that this was what the outcome was going to be, and we'd see more and more of it. If you think the solar companies are truly vested in your most valuable asset of the ground, the soils that are a rare commodity, they're finite, then you're kidding yourselves. They're in this to make money. They're in this to take advantage of communities that are in need of money. And we have to find another way. And we have to protect the land that's been in our families for generations. And it's never been easy. And I'm not saying it's going to get easy. So I am vehemently opposed and want the restrictions to stay the way they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on Zoom? Next person in person is Ron Zimmerman.
Good evening, board members. My name is Ron Zimmerman. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I live at 327 Ganser Road and also own property in the R5 district. If there's probably the most conflicted man in this room, it's me. I'm an environmental engineer by trade. So, you know, I'm a strong, strong advocate for reducing our carbon dependency. In fact, my vocation on a daily basis helps us to do just that. I do everything I can to try to help my employer reduce their dependency on the grid. So I personally applaud the board for your leadership, your vision to try to strike a balance now and for the future generations, because I lived here my entire life and I've owned property in the R5 district for several decades. So, you know, as a landowner in the R5 district, I have a vested interest in the protection and proliferation of both our agricultural heritage and the resources. As the former planning board chairman, I would remind you of the fact that the board put together a team, a cross-functional team, which included a good cross-section of members from the community to try to put together recommendations for our master plan. And you did a really good job of that. In fact, that committee put together several recommendations. One of them had to do with the future for how we should plan for the R5 district or the Ag district, and went to a public hearing, and the board voted on it unanimously to accept the recommendations in that master plan. And one of the things that it recommended was, quote, save agriculturally viable soil from development when possible. So when I look at the law in its draft form and try to see how that balances out with what we as a town have always aspired to do, which is to provide a great community that strikes a good compromise between folks that want to live here, folks that want to play here, folks that want to work here, I think you've done a great job. In fact, if I may be so bold, I think you may have been a little more than generous, because I'll read to folks in the the room here as well as who are online, what you allow for in this law, which is under the site plan review standards and the allowance for lot coverage in the R5 district. In the R5 district, lot coverage may be up to 40% of the gross area of each lot in which system components are to be located. 40%. Now, if that's not enough for us to be able to do what some of our other community members have talked about, which is to have the ability to support our farms, promote the future generation of the development of those farms so that they are viable and that they can thrive, then I think we might be being a little bit too greedy and maybe miss the point. So I applaud you for the compromise that you struck here. I think it does a good job of striking a balance and certainly goes above and beyond what we as community members have tried to do to preserve and create the ag district. So thank you.
Thank you. Next individual is Melissa Mansfield.
Good evening, and thank you for holding this public meeting. My name is Melissa Mansfield, and I'm speaking to you tonight on behalf of renewable energy company Boralex. Many of you are familiar with Boralex. We've been in the area for 20 years, have a staff of 15 and growing in our South Glens Falls office, and operate hydropower facilities across the region. Now we're expanding our solar operations. For the last 2 years, we've been meeting with leaders of the town of Monroe, community members, organizations, and farmers to hear how we can work together to make sure our proposed West River Solar Farm is designed with your community's interests in mind. We believe we found a near perfect location, close to transmission lines and almost invisible from the road. After construction, only those directly involved will know we are there. But tonight is not about our plan. There will be many opportunities ahead for us to talk throughout the permitting process. Tonight is about the town of Monroe and sensibly sited solar electricity. The town of Monroe has done well so far with the Monroe Farmland Protection Plan, but this new solar bylaw misses the mark. It effectively prohibits solar in the agricultural district, and if enacted as currently drafted, will hurt farmers and the greater community. As you have read in recent news articles and have heard and will hear about tonight, many farmers in Monroe are getting pressure from downstate real estate developers to sell their land. Saratoga County is one of the fastest growing areas in the Northeast, and developers are pushing to buy and build homes. Housing development will permanently alter the land we are discussing. According to the Monroe Farmland Protection Plan, the lands proposed for our West River project could instead be developed into more than 100 permanent houses. Solar projects, however, are reversible. Farmers lease a portion of their property to solar companies, and at the end of operations, all equipment is removed, the soils are rested and primed to return to agricultural use. Solar projects can be designed to improve soil health, retain water, nurture native species, and produce food. Here in Monroe, we are exploring ways to use the land between panels for farming, called dual use or multi-use. These may include pollinator habitats or growing appropriate crops between the rows of solar panels, though we are continually open to hearing other local suggestions as well. By leasing a portion of their land for solar, farmers can benefit from new, reliable source of income that they can then reinvest in their farms. The town of Monroe, Saratoga County, and the South Glens Falls School District will also receive increased revenues from Boralex and other solar companies leasing this land. Boralex chooses project sites based on a number of factors: community interest, availability of land, and proximity to transmission lines. The proposed bylaw has extensive restrictions on what land types can be used for solar, which, together with natural restrictions such as slopes and bodies of water, leaves less than 15% of the agricultural district. The remaining available areas are not close together, nor are they easily connected to the transmission line needed to feed the solar energy into the grid. These limitations would make it too costly for solar farms to move forward here. Ultimately, this is about allowing farmers the freedom and respect to act as responsible stewards and beneficiaries of their land, trusting that they too want to keep farming and keep the land viable for themselves and future generations. Housing development is permanent. Solar is reversible, a temporary use of these lands, not permanent development. The farmers of Monroe deserve a responsible solar siting law that keeps their and the greater community's interests at top of mind. We urge the town board to amend the bylaw to allow for responsible siting of solar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next individual this evening is Olivia Killian.
My name is Olivia Killian. I'm from 169 Burt Road, and I am in the Ag District. Tonight we are here to discuss whether solar should be approved or not in the town of Monroe. I believe that the law should be revised the current proposed law. I've been able to learn about new information on solar that I did not already know. My father, Patrick Killian, has been meeting after meeting and door after door to save our farm from total extinction. He's been reading research papers and articles on how solar can benefit us. Solar will help our farm financially fix up old and fallen barns, new equipment for fast and efficient farm work technology, and overall better quality life for our cows that's even better than the one they have already. I noticed I needed to step up and start to take more responsibility and help take care of our herd while my father focused more on saving the entire farm, including not even our own animals. It opened my eyes to how much I truly wanted to make this to be my future as an adult, and what I wanted to continue to do for the rest of my life since I was 8 years old. It's been my whole life since I came into this world, and yes, it did change in July 2013, but for the sake of our entire family farm to stay alive in the town of Monroe. Now, at 16 years, I take care of a total of 30 head in our herd, including my 2 show heifers, who I participate with in county and state shows. Solar can not only help our farm, but my future as well. I hope to not let go of my dream lifestyle, and you can help with just develop an understanding of that one important thing in your life that you would never want to disappear. This is my thing. Thank you to the town of Monroe.
Patrick Killian. Yeah.
My name is Pat Killian, 120 Burt Road, Hanford. One of the many people, or should I say a few people, that want to do solar, part of the Ag District in R5. I want to thank the council from the bottom of my heart to be able to come out to the project and actually look, be transparent with me, to agree and disagree. You know, it's part of what we do, you know, as a whole community. When I first started, 5 years old, and on the farm, I'm driving tractors, you know, it's unheard of. And, you know, to look back at it now and say, you know, what was I doing? I'm trying to help my father to continue the legacy as far as what we do, how we do things. You know, we're in the 21st century now, and I think we need to really look at, you know, and adapt what and how we do things as a business, as people, as our community. And as I've, you know, going through getting these letters and people to sign, you know, I can't believe how much work it really is and what you guys have done to go through and be represented, whether it's Republican, Democrat, or anything that we do. The amount of time that you spend away from your families. And I've talked to numerous people, you know, and also people on the board, teachers, police officers, you know, and whether they're in IT, you know, it's people put a lot of time away from their families. And I think that we do need to adapt based on, you know, the 21st century. I think it's a bright future. The dual use of solar is a win-win for everyone, you know, and based on the contingencies, whether people don't want to see, you know, the solar. And I'm just gonna, I don't know, I'd like to walk up to the actual sign or the map there that's on the wall So people get a better idea as far as, where is solar going? Where are these lines, where is the solar actually gonna be placed? And I understand and based on, our neighbors and what, and how we want to see things. But on, the other side of things, whether it's birds, bees, deer, dual use, goats, cows, my family, Olivia and Brock, my wife. It's it's very challenging to see the possible extinction of farms in the town of Monroe. So it's a hard, pill to swallow as far as we move forward. But yet we have to consider, based on our neighbors and what we do and how we do things again. We can talk about margins of profit, and we were getting charged, when my father was still here and my brother, 29 cents a kilowatt. So based on production, we were paying $7,500 a month. And based on the cost per hundredweight, as far as what farmers, get for their income. And it's still the same price 50 years ago, 40 years ago. A gallon of milk is still $2, $3, so not much has changed. But that being said, I think, it gives us an opportunity to be successful, yet dual use will give us the ability to harvest the rays, and not only that, but offset some of those costs there too, that some of these smaller farms that are struggling, to keep their family farms going. And again, it's part of the challenge that we need to consider, and the change for the 21st century as far as how we move forward. It's going to be a challenge there too. Upon extinction, we really don't know what's going to happen. So we ask people to consider, what has happened and what we can still continue. A fourth generation farmer who is actually a girl, a young woman that wants to go to Cornell or Colskill, become a vet, and engage in our family farm. So that said, we want to make sure we consider, and I'm just commended by so many people coming here, and I appreciate your concerns, and I am not here to just make thousands of dollars. I'm not going to lie to you. I've got offers right now from other farms that want to buy our property, to 3.7 million, or I can get 20,000 an acre at 10 and 12 million. So let me ask you.
Your time is expired.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark Leibowitz.
Thank you. My name is Mark Leibowitz. I've lived on West River Road for 43 years. And I have a few comments that I'd like to make. The Rural Farmland Protection Plan that was developed by Chase & Companies for the town in 2014 identified that prime farmland and farmland of statewide importance, which are the areas where solar is proposed to be restricted, constitute 65% of the total land area of the town. That's almost 2/3 of the entire town is within those lands. And the designations prime farmland and farmland of statewide significance don't have anything to do with what's happening on the land. The land is not necessarily involved in an agricultural use. It's a designation of soils that exist on that land that, if used for farms, would be suitable with drainage and the composition of the soils. An abandoned gas station or a mobile home park or dense forest can all be situated on prime farmland. Presently, there's not one single use in the town zoning code that is restricted or prohibited because it's on prime farmland. As a matter of fact, the term prime farmland doesn't even exist in the town code. That means that the proposed prohibition of solar on prime farmlands, if that were to be adopted, every other use permitted in the code could still be conducted on prime farmland, except solar. And I don't think it's fair to designate one use can't take place on prime farmland, where other uses such as the development of a subdivision or a golf course can. And that also takes that agricultural perspective use out of the play. So it doesn't make sense. If the town decides that it wants to protect prime farmland, which I don't think is the right way to go. If the town decides that's the way it's going to go, it has to address other uses in prime farmland as well as solar. You can't say we're going to restrict one use, but not other uses which compromise the use of that land for farm purposes. Thank you.
Pedro Rodriguez, possibility. And he's passed. Next individual is Guy Squeers.
Hello, my name is Guy Squeers. I own 3 parcels of land in the R5 district. And I am the author of the letter together that you will start today. My name is Audrey Red. I'm disappointed that the board has taken sort of a negative approach to this and saying, well, we're a pro-ag community. And by proposing the restrictions that they have in this draft, they're saying that you're limiting your ability to earn a living. I'll give you an example. My farm is on 81 Old West Road. It's 36 acres and change. The proposed solar project is approximately 20 acres, give or take. I would challenge anyone to find it. Same thing with the Killian property. Same thing with the other properties. These parcels and these projects have been very carefully selected and planned based on the needs of the solar companies as well as the community. They are carefully positioned to gather as much production as possible with a limited amount of exposure. In case anybody hasn't read the letter, I'm going to hit some highlights here. But before I do that, I want to hit on some of the other things about farming in this community. I grew up on this farm in the 50s. I milked cows there by hand. I put in not bale hay, loose hay, like the Amish do, in a hammer with forks, pitching it into the corners of the barn so it will be level. I sweat my blood and tears on this property. I do not want to see it go to development. But I'm in a position right now where I'm a retired teacher, I live on Social Security. I have to fund any difference that's created by a negative cash flow. I rent this parcel out for hay at $30 an acre. That's less than around $1,000. That does not pay the taxes on this property, let alone the maintenance and the repairs and everything else that has to be done on owning a piece of property. The barns are falling down, the roofs leak. I had to buy a piece of equipment, and if any of you have never bought a piece of farm equipment, it might knock the socks off the cost. These are all things that we face on a daily basis, and I cannot continue without some sort of supplemental income. Along comes solar, offering me 15 to 20 times the income that I'm making on what I have right now. What would you do? It's a win-win for everyone. Benefits of solar energy, we've talked about it. It's there. Reduce the greenhouse effect, it's there. We're not proposing a 100% usage on these properties. It's a very limited, very small array, especially on mine and the Barton property. they won't even be seen. And it's absolutely necessary that we make a few amendments to the draft proposal. We've been talking about prime farmland, prime this, prime that. That word needs to go. It's farmland. It doesn't need to be classified as prime. What difference does the soil content make in regards to solar projects? There is no harm to the land from solar energy. It's a few pipes driven in the ground with the arrays attached, some wires that run overhead, and when it's done, it's gone. Everything is back to where it was. So what I'm proposing is that we amend the draft to remove the word prime totally. And also in small parcels like mine in the barns, 40% is not enough because it's such a small amount of land to start with. So in order for that to be viable, we need 60%. So that's my proposal to amend the draft to include 60% usage on parcels of less than 50 acres. I want to close by saying one final thing, and it's been hit on a couple of times here. God allows us to farm from below, but science allows us to farm from above. Thank you.
Next individual we have is Jim Zuck.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I believe this is the fourth time I've spoken to the board or planning board in this town. My brother and I own the largest tax parcel in the town, 180 Old West Road, 308 acres. My brother and I have farmed since 16 years old, first generation farm, and we never believed we would have a legacy. Until recently, when my daughter decided to quit her job as a venture capitalist, you know, like she's tough. And my son has decided to go to Purdue for ag engineering. So now we have the opportunity to perhaps move our business forward into the future. Now, I have no idea what our business is going to look like in 10 years or 20 years, especially 20. And I'm hoping we're doing about the same thing. So as we move forward, we have to take whatever opportunities are given to us. It may not be corn, it may not be soybeans, it may be chrysanthemums, it may be hydroponics, we don't know that. But in our toolbox to succeed, our future, we need opportunities. Now, as I've spoken to you before, we do have a solar array at the farm we own in Scottsdale. We have a 25-acre array. Is it exactly what I wanted to do? No, but it was a financial decision. We had to, my brother and I wanted to secure some income for our future retirement, which, you know, farmers don't ever really retire. We just slow down. So I oppose the law as written. If you see the map up there, obviously our piece is, you know, is excluded. I'm concerned about the other parcels. You talk about prime farmland. I don't know the other parcels that are available. Are they woods? Are they wetlands? If it's wetlands, it's going to be excluded anyways. If it's woods, the people here would raise holy hell if somebody comes in and cuts down. I think that would be a travesty. But that's what will happen if that's the only things available. Guy Swear spoke about projects being basically, the project has to fit with the infrastructure. And that's a critical thing. So if you don't have the transmission line from Hickory Power, you're not gonna have a project. If you don't have a community distribution line that can accept power, you're not gonna have that opportunity. Sometimes when we make laws, we have good intentions. And an example I'll use is we want to protect farmland. And we did the same thing in Scottsdale. We've got to protect farmland. So we have an R5. Well, what happened? You ended up eating the frontage on it. So a 30-acre field was now eaten up. The road frontage was all eaten up. And you ended up with a 15-acre field out back. So you basically destroyed the farmland at a faster rate. So you have to make you have to consider everything that goes in when you're making these rules and laws. I am very cognizant of the fact that big projects can eat a lot of land up. I'm aware of that. I like to see the smaller projects, community-based ones like 20 acres under. They seem to fit better into our communities, especially in the farm communities. And like in our operation, it gives us a little extra cushion for the future, for retirement. So, I really think your law is really onerous. I mean, it really targets people like me and Pat and Cheers. I mean, it targets us and for the benefit of everybody. And I just really have a difficult time with it. It's a public taking. You're taking our opportunity to make a profit, to have a legacy, to retire, and perhaps would even force us to sell our properties, which would be the thing we don't want. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. The next individual this evening is John Arnold.
Not a big fan of mics, but you can hear me okay. I'm actually, in the beginning of my talk, I'm gonna walk over and point at the map. Everybody else keeps saying, I wish I could do it. I can do it. This red parcel or pink parcel here, that's my farm. My name's John Arnold. I'm an active farmer in the town of Monroe. I own and operate with my wife and children our Lair Farm at 30 Palmer Ridge, Gansevoort, New York. We've been farming in the town of Monroe now on this parcel for 50 years. My mom's family farmed over on Old West Road for 150 years prior to that. We've been farming in New York State for 400 years. We started in almost just outside of New York City, and we've moved up the Hudson Valley ahead of development, okay? So I'm keenly aware of what it's like to move because of development, what it's like to not be able to grow, expand, or operate because of development. The map up here, I'm very glad it's up here. I'd like everybody to take another look at it because we keep hearing about how limiting this law is with that gray area you see there. And if you look very closely, you can see the land uses that are highlighted behind it. Many of them are fields, okay? These are areas that are allowed under the current rendition of the law, if I understand it correctly. I am actually up here. I didn't think I'd be in the middle because I'm hearing people that don't want it anywhere in the R5, but I am in the middle. I support the law as it's written at this moment. I did in the beginning. Todd and I had talks. I honestly felt that it should be less than 20% coverage on any land mass to avoid people coming up and buying 100 acres and putting 80 acres of solar panels on it and walking away. Okay, you hear a lot about saving family farms. I didn't bring my children with me tonight. I have a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old. The 14-year-old, I'm not sure what she's going to do, but I'm sure it's great things. The 11-year-old right at the moment would like to be a farmer. Just brings joy to my heart. We'll see. Time will tell, okay? But he's 11 years old. I've heard tonight a couple of things that disturb me a little bit. I've heard that prime farmland isn't important, okay? It may not be important to solar panels because who cares where you stick them? I'm good with that. That's why I approve sticking it in all the non-prime areas, okay? Prime farmland is important if you farm it. And anybody that's a farmer knows that if you have prime farmland, you don't have to work as hard. I have it very easy because my parents spent 40 years developing our farm into very nice land. It's very easy to make money with it. It's very easy to grow crops on it, okay? We're not a big farm, we're only 152 acres. We contract raise dairy heifers for Henny and Family Dairy out of Saratoga Springs and Mount Upton. We sold our milk cows in 1995 because it was a lot of work and not a lot of profit. We now make a decent living contract raising heifers. We're like a boarding school for young dairy cows. We have a good customer. I support my family and my farm with it. As of next year, we will have paid off the farm. We will own it lock, stock, and barrel. We own nothing on anything, and that's how we do it. Not everybody can. If my son, who's 11, chooses to come into the operation, we will have to consider borrowing money and expanding. However, looking at this map, if we eliminate the use of, or if we include the use of prime farmlands, I'm not sure it will be here. That's okay, my family's used to moving, we'll find another place to farm, okay? But when we talk about a short-term use and we talk about 25 years, my son is 11 years old, that's a really great age, by the way. He's just starting to get excited about driving tractors, he's working with the animals, it's fantastic. This land will be available for him to potentially rent or own when he's 36 years old. And most of these solar contracts, and I know about them because I've got a stack this high at home, because I keep hearing about if we don't do solar, we'll have to sell to all the downstate developers. The only developers I've heard from in 25 years is solar developers. Most of these contracts have a 15-year extension, that's 40 years. My son will be 51 years old. Yeah. So this is not a short-term thing for us, okay? But I'm not going to yank at your heartstrings. I don't expect you to write this law based on my personal needs or my family's personal needs. I think you should write this based on the future of agriculture. And without prime lands, you don't have agriculture. And if you eliminate enough of the prime lands, you lose a viable economic base for agriculture. If there's so few of us left, if we're surrounded by housing developments and solar panels, okay, it ends. We just move. Okay. That's okay. Maybe, like I said, we'll farm somewhere. We'll make money in it. The only other thing I'd like to say is I keep hearing this concept, we need it for the money, we need it to stay in business. There's a plan that nobody seems to want to talk about, and I don't think any of these farms is considered, and that's the purchase of development rights, which would allow them to sell off the development of their land in the future for the value of that development right now. It would protect the farmland into the future and allow you to pass it on. Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Good evening. Thanks for giving me the time to speak. What I want to do is maybe give us a little picture of where we're going and look back to where we've been. So there's probably a meeting like this 120 years ago on a very disruptive technology, renewable energy. And that seemed to work out. But the town row is 24,908 acres. And back in 1900, we had a few thousand residents. Several hundred farms. Going fast forward, we now have close to 16,000 residents or more, and the farm numbers have dwindled down from several hundred. We have 8 dairy farms, 2 calves, 1 pig that I think we lost, 7 horse farms that added 3 more, so we're 10, and 1 sheep farm that I think we lost, and 1 nursery. So that's the extent in the rural comprehensive plan for farmland. The farmland acreage listed in that is 4,156 acres out of the 24,908. So let's go forward. All 16,000 residents in the town use electricity that I'm aware of. I don't know of anybody that does not use electricity. And solar is a disruptive technology. And we're in a very interesting place that we not only have solar, we have storage, we have electric cars and autonomous cars, and the convergence of all 4 coming together. So you replace an ICE vehicle, 280 million of them in the nation, burning 2.2 gallons per day, times 365 days. We're going to have to offset a whole lot of electricity just for that aspect. The entire world is transforming to electric. Whether you get your new weed whacker, your mower, your cars, the school buses are going all electric, and construction equipment's going electric. And with that, you're not only going to be able to use the school bus for storage, for peak shaving, and your new F-150 truck to back up your house in case the grid goes down. I mean, these are the things that are happening right now. Planes are coming electric. Beta Technologies in Burlington has a passenger drone that they're building out the charging stations for. That's a Silicon Valley company based in Burlington building out the charging stations as we speak. So basically, if Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla are here today, they could look at the twigs, the twine, the main service panel, and understand everything that's going on. It really hasn't changed a whole lot in 100 years. Thomas Edison would look at this, did not have a clue what a smartphone is. So a smartphone disruptive technologies is usually 10 to 15 years. And that's what we're just in the beginning of. So solar is one of those. Solar and farming goes hand in hand. Creates pollinator habitat of a lot of these larger solar farms. In Vermont, they found that farmers grow saffron, which is the most expensive spice that's on the market. They get a huge reward for growing saffron. And for some reason, that goes well with solar. They use it for sheep grazing, goats, organic vegetables around the solar farms. So it's not that solar is against farming. Farming is against solar. They work hand in hand. You can have solar to power your farm and then spend some of it backwards into the grid. Right now, we looked at the meter, it's flashing right to left, the lights are on, the AC's going, all powered by those panels out front. And it'll do that for a lot of years to come. So the big thing is the placement of solar panels. People don't like the looks of the panels. I haven't heard one person complain about 1,000 megawatts that's going through town. Okay, Champlain Hudson Power Express. Nobody's complaining because nobody sees it. Coming from Quebec Hydro, under the Lake Champlain, pops up at Whitehall, along the train tracks right here, back into the river, offset Indian Point. So I was asked is, they have to place these panels near, you have two choices, distribution or transmission lines. You only have two substations that can handle distribution. With the big transmission lines, then you have to put your own substation in. Costs a lot of money. Yeah, it's a 25-year lease, but the cost of interconnection is great. So the chances of upgrading that 25 to 40 years from now is pretty strong because all the hard work has been done. Panels can be recycled, upgraded, replaced. Nothing that's going to harm the property at all. So all I would ask is, look through the windshield instead of rear view. Thank you.
Ed Smith, you have a question mark. Would you like to speak?
Ed Smith, I own and operate a dairy farm with my son on Selfridge Road, own property in Clark and Selfridge. From my neighbors talking, there was a proposed site on Selfridge, inactive, looking at it. I oppose the law for one reason. I know there's a lot of sites in the town, if you can't see them, if they're out like no man's land between the river and Burt Road and this and that, no, that's one thing. But I think if you change a law to incorporate all prime farmland in the town, you're going down a slippery slope. And the next thing you know, you're gonna be seeing, because I've already talked to different neighbors that haven't addressed this, this solar projects, but talk to me personally, that they've been approached, like John said, I've been, for 12 years, I've had aerial maps thrown at me, your farm's great, you can do this flat, whatever. Infrastructure right now might not call for it, but down the road, technology and infrastructure could call for it. So I think the town has to look and ask themselves, do they value prime farming as agricultural prime farmland, or do they, because when you go on that slippery slope, you could be going down Forksville Road, Selfridge Road, Clark Road, and I don't think there's too many residents that I farm around that want to look out and see a solar farm. And on the other side of the fence, there's not, in my business, and I know a lot of dairy farmers, there's not a dairy farm out there that if 25 acres comes up for rent, they're on the phone and they're grabbing it and they'll rent it. So there's uses for that prime farmland other than solar. I don't hold it against anybody that wants to, look into it. I'm just saying, I think it's, the town looks at it, they're gonna have to ask themselves the question, what's our town gonna look like 10, 20 years from now because of it? And that slippery slope, it might not be 2, 3, or 4 proposals like it is here tonight. there might be 5, 10, or 15 around the town. So that's what you gotta think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Gina Leclerc. All right. She out in the hall? Oh, okay, so we'll move on.
She's gonna do Zoom.
Oh, she is. Is she on Zoom? Mike Smith.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak as well. I'm Mike Smith. I live on West River Road, and I joined the property that one of the properties that's going to have a solar project on it. So just up front, I do oppose the rule. I'm for the solar projects. But so I'll give you a little background. Lived here, grew up here, moved away, 30 some odd years in the military, just retired. So I've been around the world, did 20 years of operations all over the world. But then 10 years of my military time was like a base commander, city manager, and also oversaw large solar projects, all alternative energy projects for the Air Force. So I have a little bit of background of that. And now I live in the ag district. I'm not doing very well as a farmer. I'm trying to do it part-time. All my chickens were killed just recently. And my hops fields turned to weeds again, but bees are doing okay. So, but anyway, so, and I did spend a lot of money. I can see why it costs a lot to be a farmer. But after all that time traveling, I was happy to move back here because of the farmland and it's beautiful. And you'd hate to see that go away, but I do think that this is a great opportunity to have dual use of the farmland and the solar alternative energy, the solar projects. It's perfect. It's hard when I looked at these projects, and they were large projects, very large projects. It was hard to go ahead and find one that worked. The numbers worked out, you got a return on investment, and everything came together. The cost was cost effective. So the fact that these are working here, that's a good sign to me. That's a viable project, and it should work. In addition, the environmental effects. There's too much carbon. Everyone knows reduce the carbon load. It's a great opportunity to have solar energy. Decrease the amount of oil and et cetera we burn. So that's a great opportunity as well. But something you might not think about it for the town, it's also, there's some energy security involved with having a big solar project here. So the grid go down or something else, you have solar, you have energy generation in the area that we could draw on. It should be never have to do that. That's something we looked at bases all over the world, was the energy security as well. And then also, like I mentioned earlier, dual use. And the good thing is, down the road, if you have the solar energy project, 20 years from now, you could pull it out. But if you have a housing development there, you can't withdraw the housing development. 20 years from now, you could reverse the solar project, but you could not reverse the development. So anyway, I'm for the project and against the law. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bridget Martin.
Thank you for letting me speak. And I think everybody tonight's been really eloquent with what they've had to say about the town. And one thing I know for sure is everybody loves our community and is passionate about it. It's nice to see. I don't own farmland in the lands being talked about or in the agricultural district, but I just wanted to give a little perspective as a taxpayer and a member of the community and how I'd like to see the community and how the community's been moving in the past 5 to 10 years. We spent a lot of money on studies for the farmland, for the comprehensive plan. There have been a lot of meetings and the community's come together with a lot of different members and professionals to put together a comprehensive plan of what we want the community to look like. Included in that was the agricultural district. 1766 was when our community was first settled by the Parks family, and they were on farms. It was before the American Revolution. And then after the American Revolution, we had other farmers settle here. Reynolds Corners, Clark Corners, Rogers Farm. We are a community that's made up of farms. In 1700s, we had a lot of the colonial soldiers, people that were gifted farmlands to settle in this area so that we could become a country. In the 1800s, our town was settled by these soldiers, and they were farmers. They also developed along the rivers. They did our forest land, which is by the Palmerton Range. A lot of that was harvested, and our rivers were used for that. There was power that was developed along the rivers to help these sawmills and different factories that emerged to take care of the lumber and a lot of things that happened on the farms. In the 1900s, we developed more hydropower. As we went into the Industrial Revolution, we had dams that were developed, and we went from having just the power developed for use in that factory to developing the power to be used in larger factories and to be put into a grid and to be sold and to sent into other areas. Also during this Industrial Revolution, it was a big time for toxic waste. The complications related to the greed and the abuse of our natural resources followed us into this century. And I think into this century, the community is looking to have balance between our natural resources and commerce. I've been an advocate for getting more jobs in our community. And one of the ways that we can do that is to have farms. Farms produce jobs. The solar panels don't produce jobs. They don't produce jobs locally, and they take all the revenue and they export it. In one of the reports that the county put together, these were the benefits for the farms. It provides wildlife habitat, pest control, recharges groundwater reserves, cleanses surface waters, purifies air, pollination, the bees can't use solar panels, moderates winter and summer climates, reduces stormwater runoff and flooding, sequesters carbon and reduces greenhouse gases 66 times more than developed land. It would be costly to society to have to replace environmental services that open lands provide. I also think that farms create jobs. They'll support tourism. In the reports that you've put together, we're putting together a Moreau route that will bring day tourists in. Nobody's gonna wanna be going up and down our roads looking at solar panels. So it's not gonna promote day tourism. Is that okay? Okay. And in the Moreau Farmland Protection Plan, it says that their goal is to preserve our heritage and to secure our future. I support this law, and in addition, I think that being able to have 40% so that you can use natural energy on your farm to reduce the cost. And the one last thing that I'll say is that I think that any government that tells people what they can do with their land needs to support them. If you tell landowners that they can't put in solar because you have a farm plan, then you need to execute the third line of that, which is to giving out loans, having dedicated support and staffing to support our farmers. They can't survive on their own. If we can give $100,000 to a brewery, we can give $100,000 to a farmer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We do have Gina Leclerc via Zoom at this time. Gina, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, board, for hearing all of us tonight. I just have something I've written down I'd like to say. Moreau's Town Board has historically always cared about and supported Moreau's farmers. The rules in the farm zone are different than any of our other zoning districts. We have a right to farm law, which gives farmers protections that no other district has. Recently, several of Moreau farmers and people from the public and the town board worked together to draft the farmland protection plan that Bridget Martin just spoke about. This plan was then voted on and the board supported it. It's available for you to look at anytime at Town Hall. This town has always had a board that has supported the farm district. People who want solar installations like to say that solar farms harvest the sun and the panels provide green energy. It sure makes it sound like they're a regular part of the farming district. These are large electric generation facilities that will be installed on land rented within our farm district. This is not farming. I don't see anything green in the future when they need to be disposed of. The only solar I support in the farmland is infrastructure that sets and helps the farmer pay for their electric costs. If each of you look to the left of you today, turn to the left. The person to the left of you is helping pay for this solar installation. Did you know that? Did you know that each year when you file your tax return, you are sending money to the federal and the state governments who supports these companies who install these solar generation facilities? Without your money, their business would not be as lucrative, and will it even be sustainable long enough to be able to be there when these panels need to be removed? Is the plan we write today going to be enough to remove those panels? Or are, once again, you, the taxpayer, on the hook to find a way to get rid of these panels? And you can say, well, that's not my land. That's not my problem. It will be your land and your problem if the company and the landowner at that point are gone. They don't pay their taxes. They don't take care of anything. Then you, the taxpayer, is looking at an 80-acre solar facility, which who knows where the panels are going to go even at this time now. You, the taxpayer, is going to be holding responsibility for a major industrial facility that's no longer usable, that needs to be disposed of, and who knows where. It doesn't feel real green to me. I tasked the board today, and I appreciate all the work that you've put in. My request today is that you stand up for the protection of our irreplaceable and rapidly diminishing prime farmland, and you protect it from projects such as this. Please do not change the law as you've proposed it. Please stand fast and keep it like it is. I know it's not easy. I know it's hard to look at the Killian family and know that they're struggling to maintain their farm, but there's way more happening here. And I know you're all intelligent people, and it's a struggle. And I don't envy you the position you're in making these decisions. Once again, please don't change the law as proposed. And thank you for letting me speak today.
Thank you. Next individual we have is Dave Burke.
Good evening, everyone. Dave Byrne, I live at 10 Doe Run. I'm a resident of Monroe. We can't agree on everything here tonight, but it is good to see everyone in person. And also, I think we can agree that we don't want solar all over the town of Monroe. We want to do it the right way. We want to be smart about it. So I own a company. We're a combat veteran-owned small business, Renewa Energy, based out of my home office here in the town of Monroe. We hire 8 people. We create jobs. We built it from the ground up. And as a combat veteran-owned small business, we don't give up. And so we've been waiting in the wings here for 2 years. Longest moratorium that I'm aware of in New York State. I travel all across New York State and help farmers with their solar projects. And we've been waiting patiently, and we do believe, and we're optimistic that we can come to a common sense-based solution here. Something else that we believe in is we believe in treating others like we want to be treated. I can say with a clear conscience that the projects that we propose in the town would be acceptable to me if I lived in the immediate vicinity, because it mitigates any visual impacts on the community. So we have a lot of experience in working towards win-win-win solutions across New York State. The #1 win is for the property owner, and I wish that I could introduce you all here to some of the amazing men and women who farm across this great state, all the way up to the Canadian border. Many of them are land rich, cash poor, and we've been able to allow them in some cases to change their family trees. It's a big deal. #2, the win is for the community. We're offering reduced electricity costs to these community solar projects. These are small projects. They don't encompass typically more than 20 acres. We're also benefiting the environment. And another win is that we're generating tax revenue for the local municipality. I want to address a couple of misconceptions. Number one, that there is no recycling for solar and that solar panels will somehow miraculously be processed at the town transfer station. I drive to the town transfer station most Saturdays, unless I can get my 17-year-old motivated enough. And you should be aware that in the industry, across the world, there have been commercial solutions that have become available based on market growth. In Europe, which is leading in terms of renewable energy, there are very robust companies that generate revenue through taking these products that have been installed and then recycling them. There's a commercially viable solution, and that's also available stateside, and that will continue to become more available. Number two, solar cannot be installed everywhere. And I want to address this map. There's been a lot of talk about this map. This map misrepresents what's possible in terms of solar. And again, I take the stance of a developer, and you have to validate a site and confirm viability from many different standpoints. Number one, it has to be within about 5 miles of a substation. Number two, that substation has to have capacity to support the project. Number three, you need to have three-phase power in the vicinity of that property. If you don't have three-phase power in the vicinity of the property, you have to be able to incur costs and make the investments to bring three-phase power to that location. Once you get above half a mile, give or take, that becomes a deal killer for the project. Another qualifier, you can't have wetlands on the property. Another thing that we try to avoid is we try to not clear cut the land, because from an environmental standpoint, that would be counterintuitive. So in order for us to have an intelligent conversation about what's possible here in the town of Monroe, we would have to take that shaded area, we'd have to superimpose the substations and the feeders that are being fed by those substations. Then we have to map out how many of those substations have capacity. Then we have to look at how many of those power lines have capacity for projects. And we've done that work. Last year, we did the math. There's 23.7 megawatts available in the 3 substations that serve the town of Monroe. And our average project is 5 megawatts AC. That's actually the maximum size of the project. So when you divide 23.7 by 5, you get 4.5 systems, okay? So when we look at the snapshot of last year, what was possible, we had about 4.5 projects for community solar that would be viable in the town. Fast forward to this year, at those same substations, there's only about 1.5 projects worth of capacity left. So obviously, some of those projects have moved into the utility queue, but there's not a lot of additional capacity left for project development at the community scale level now. So again, I think it's accurate to be, it's important to be accurate. We have 3,900 acres in town being currently farmed. Again, 3,900 acres. We are looking at the potential for about 4.5 projects in the town.
Your time is expired.
Okay, that's 2.5%. The benefits exceed the cost.
Thank you.
Will Zimmerman, question mark, do you wish to speak?
Good evening. My name is Will Zimmerman. My family owns and operates Canyon Farm at 327 Ranch Road in the Ag District. As an active third generation farmer, we know what it takes to run a farm, and it takes a lot of hard work. And myself firsthand, I've experienced that a couple long days here and there for sure. But I do support this law because it does protect the prime farmland here in town, and as it's been stated before, that is quickly diminishing, and it's not easily replaceable. My grandfather started our farm in 1962, so we've been here for about 60 years, and he started in 1962 by planting the first Christmas tree, and ever since then my family has grown the farm to what it's been, or to what it is now, and we intend to keep growing here. I intend to come back and run the farm in the future. So yeah, I just ask that, the board, stays with the proposed law, and protects the prime farmer community. Thank you.
Thank you. William Gifford.
Thank you, Todd, members of the board. I'm William Gifford. We're farmers from Gansford, 9 generations there. We own some property on West River Road, the old Jenny Williams farm, and she was our ancestor, so that's 5 generations there now. But I'm in favor of this solar project and bringing the solar industry into the town of Monroe. I think it'll be beneficial for the town of Monroe in the long term. Plato once said, we can easily forgive a child who is afraid of the dark, but the real tragedy of life is when men and women are afraid of the light. Part of coming from the dark to the light for us today, I believe, is to realize that power generation, using just the old system, the old technology, will put us more and more into the dark over time. We should be investigating and nurturing updated methods of power production. We believe this will go a long way in keeping us and our future generations in the light. We all know the benefits of green energy. And within our town, currently we have a debate on whether a business and local farmers have the right to form a partnership to develop a power generation business within our town. That's what the debate is all about. The partnership will be on a marginal, and I repeat this, it's marginal, not prime farmland like Mr. Arnold may own. You do have good farmland. But we're talking about marginal farmland in most cases here. Clay, rocky ground. Doesn't really grow good crops unless you put a lot of chemicals on it. We all know this. So again, this is marginal farmland, largely unnoticeable from public routes of passage. And where it is noticeable, the partnership can and will enhance the visual impacts of this solar park. We can do this with decorative fencing or natural hedges. Most people won't even see it from the road. So we're not building a fossil fuel plant or a smokestack industry facility. We're interested in developing an environmentally friendly green energy system within the most hidden and underutilized elements of our rural community. Subprime farmland. The River Road Solar Park is expected to produce enough clean energy, electricity in our town to power approximately 2,000 to 2,700 New York homes. Not people, but homes that multiple residents live in. This is based on US Energy Information Administration, which you can download. Most of you know the benefits of green renewable energy, and that's part of a well-diversified national power grid. We're just looking to increase the strength of our power grid, and we're doing it a little tiny bit at a time in the town of Monroe, in Saratoga County, in New York State. If we don't do it, other communities will. And again, we're talking about subprime farmland. Most of you know the benefits of the green renewable energy, and that's all part of a well-diversified national power grid. But what about the benefits to the farmland itself? People are kind of overlooking it. Number one, having solar panels on a lot of acreage, that will maintain farmland for future generations. Whether it's my children or my grandchildren or someone else's, it really doesn't matter, as long as the farmland is there. This is truly like a farmland bank that we can use for future withdrawals. And in the meantime, we're collecting interest from green energy, the power generated on this land. That's currently, with today's technology, subprime. But in the future, who knows what the technology will be? It could be very productive farming. We don't know. Farmland, I did hear about recycling. The materials that are in these solar panels, silver, copper, cadmium, indium, gallium, most of these are rare earth elements that we ship in from China. When these panels are done with their useful life, 20 years, 25 years, they're 98% recyclable because they're worth so much.
The reason why I put fences around these things is to prevent people from stealing these panels for recycling and making money on the panels themselves. So I'm not worried about the recycling on this. Solar panels emit no toxic gases, no toxic materials, no radiation, no excessive heat. Other thoughts, property rights. Why should my neighbor control what I should or should not do on my property as long as it's a legal activity? We're hurting no one. We're bringing the town of Monroe up into current society. And there's also an increase in demand for skilled labor with landscape management, electrical engineers, construction labor for building and ongoing maintenance of these solar panel parks. This will increase wage and salary revenue for our community.
Your time has expired, so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kuzma. I appreciate your time and the board.
Thank you. Next individual I have listed is Rich Morris, but I believe he has left the building. He has. Next person, Jim Aiken with a question mark. As he no longer. He's on Zoom.
We had a Zoom.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay. So we'll move on to a Zoom. I'm sorry. Michael Fingar from US Light Energy. Go ahead, Michael. Michael, can you hear
Hi,
us?
good evening. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, we can hear you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, board. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. I echo a lot of my fellow commenters in saying that the many considerations go into the siting and installation of a well-designed solar energy project, particularly those at the community solar scale of 5 megawatts or less. And I want to just echo that not all electrical lines are suitable for the interconnection of a project, and a properly designed and thoughtfully developed project needs to consider land use, environmental constraints, visual impacts. But by far the most challenging part of siting a solar project is the electrical infrastructure. Adequately sized three-phase electrical distribution lines and the supporting substations are critical to ensuring that these projects can deliver value to the surrounding community. And the lack of distribution infrastructure significantly limits where we can actually install these solar projects. It's also important to keep in mind that larger scale projects than the community scale of 5 megawatts are currently able to be sited through Office of Renewable Energy Siting, which is an office established in New York State for larger projects of 20 megawatts and above. And that effectively bypasses local zoning laws. So the laws that are being proposed tonight, to our understanding, really don't limit the large scale projects of the utility size that may be worrisome to some of the town members. And I'd like to point out in the town of Monroe that the electrical infrastructure necessary to connect the smaller scale of the community distributed generation projects don't appear to align with the proposed zoning requirements. For example, the majority of those three-phase electrical lines appear to be located on or near Reynolds Road, which is predominantly zoned in R3, and that currently prohibits solar. So if adopted as written, our analysis has shown in overlaying the circuit map in what I see as a map presented on the screen tonight, through the allowed zones, there's only a limited number of parcels that can adequately support the requirements listed in the law and meet the electrical needs of a project. Our analysis has shown that that's limited to 14 parcels or less that would meet the requirements in both the law and the electrical infrastructure. So we're here tonight just to encourage the town of Monroe to take a more parcel focused approach or an overlay district, which would strongly support landowners' rights. And rather than trying to fit the law within existing zones, really take a look at where these projects can be sited and allow them to be sited where a landowner would like them and where they have the ability to do so and their land is suitable. We believe through proper site plan review and decommissioning agreements that solar projects can deliver on the town's statement of purpose that's included in the current law without negatively impacting the enjoyment of neighboring properties. In addition, we believe that the removal of those zone restrictions will allow landowners and farmers in particular to diversify their sources of revenue and enhance the economic viability of their existing operation. Even when solar is allowed in all zoning districts, farmland can and will remain abundantly available and a beneficial resource in the town of Monroe. I strongly feel that the idea that all farmlands will be entirely or largely consumed by solar is a misconception. It's not realistic when you factor in the infrastructure and the economic challenges faced by all solar projects. And through the use of a strong decommissioning plan, adherence to NISTAM guidelines and other criteria such as lot size and coverage requirements, and not to mention the limited nature of the electrical infrastructure, restrictions such as zone and soil type are simply unnecessary and counterproductive while infringing on the rights of landowners to do what they believe is right for the property. And certainly if they're under certain economic circumstances, they should have the right to do that. A restrictive zone-based approach to solar not only infringes on property owners' rights, but will limit the benefits solar can bring to the community. And I'd just like to highlight those for the board tonight. Those include creating additional tax revenue for the town, county, and school district by the pilot that's described in your current draft law. And contrary to some of the comments,
I want to let you know you have 1 minute remaining.
Yep. So I'd also just like to highlight, contrary to some of the comments I heard tonight, solar does create local jobs during the development, installation, ongoing operation and maintenance, as well as the legal and finance management of the project. It creates a clean and renewable asset in the community that has fairly static impacts that results in no additional strain to the town, county, or school resources. And there's no increases in traffic, lighting, public utilities, or noise. It also helps support the state's energy goal of achieving 70% renewable energy by 2030. So lastly, I'd just like to leave the board. We'd strongly encourage you to reconsider the concept of an overlay district, or alternatively, given that the majority of the infrastructure appears to be located in areas outside of the current zones, consider adding zone R3 or incorporating that district as an allowable district for solar so that all landowners that are able to site these projects can. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next individual, Joanne Carruthers, has a question mark on the motion.
It's all been said. I support solar. My brother.
Thank you. Larissa Byrne.
Larissa Byrne, Town Monroe. Thank you for what you do. You do have a very difficult decision, and I thank everyone for their, as a woman said, eloquent comments. It's wonderful to see Americans coming and voicing their opinions here. And I just wanted to say that I am in support of landowners' rights. And I've heard a lot of stories tonight from farmers and their families who've been here for generations. I really respect and value farmers and the work that they do. And I hope that we can support them in continuing this very important history of Americana. Thank you.
Thank you.
One more to drive, it looks like. That would be me. Okay, sorry, I can't rename.
Dan Dudley, Queensbury, New York resident. I represent the electricians that serve the capital region. It's 1,600, 1,700 union workers in the area. So I'll say as far as the work we got on solar, it's mixed. So I'm not here necessarily knowing that this is going to benefit them or not. In general, I'd have to say that, PV is a good neighbor. There's a lot of things that could be used, your land could be used for that's not necessarily a neighbor, bringing extra traffic, not really improving the tax base, like apartment projects or other things that may end up merging their way in through variances and everything else. So having a good, quiet neighbor who can provide something to the tax base, it does prevent, development. Currently, it's going to be kind of hard to remove. So if you look at the solar projects, they are designed, there's an exit date basically. And they're bonded to be removed again. So it's not really something people should worry too much about. They'll preserve property owners' opportunity to live, enjoy their property themselves, and not pass it on, break it up, turn it into something that no one can enjoy. So that's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Dominic Town. He's no longer with us tonight.
Travis Smith has a question mark. Travis, you wish to speak?
Hi, I'm Travis Smith. I own and operate a dairy farm with my father on the corner of Clark and Selfridge Road. And I just want to say, I don't support putting the solar panels in ag zones. My biggest concern with all that is not the 4 projects or whatever are proposed here today. It's we own and rent land that borders up next to some of these projects. And they're right there. The landowners there could, all of a sudden, you get the green light to go ahead, then you lose 20 acres here, you lose 15 acres here. And every acre that you farm matters. And then you have the concern, for me, you say 25 years, and they're gone, you can take them down. If you're relying on this grid, who's saying you're not just gonna re-up your lease, replace them with more solar panels, and add more to another parcel? You know, if you're relying on this grid, how do you all of a sudden get rid of it and then go back to normal? You know, I don't know what 25, 30 years will be from now for farming or energy, but those are some of my concerns. And if you really want to preserve farmland forever, like they said, sell off your developmental rights, your development rights. It'll stay farmland forever. There's plenty of farmers out there willing to pay good money for farms and keep it farming. If you don't want to sell your land, but you want to keep your farm, sell off your land rights, you get money and you can continue to farm. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Looks like, do we have anybody on Zoom? At this time, it would be Daryl Pilon, or Pilon, Standard Solar. I'm sorry. Did I get it right?
Very, very close. Hi, I'm Daryl Pilon with Standard Solar. I wish this was a two-way thing, so you guys could ask me questions and I can answer them. I think there's been a lot of great things discussed here, I really do. What I want to discuss is what we do as a solar financier, okay? And I think that's an important piece. I think if you look at things globally, it can be scary. But as Dave mentioned, there's a limited amount. You know, when you take a look at, okay, what can we do? Well, you start at the substation, and there's only so much energy that can take. And that very much limits what you can do. Nobody said tonight, but maybe 1 in 10 projects, if you're lucky, get built. That means these guys go out doing this, trying to make these things work. It's sort of like developing a plot of land for an apartment complex, only to find down the road that it doesn't financially work after years of investment and so on. It's almost like childbirth, like the miracle of childbirth and the miracle of solar birth. Because it's a chess game that every piece moves every week. And that's the biggest challenge in solar. I know that doesn't concern you guys tonight, but I do think it's important to look at the true limitation of the grid and where things can be tied in. That limits the number of projects that can really be done. The rest are irrelevant. You know, when we did a project in Massachusetts, the shame of that project was they cut down woods because the prime farmland wasn't available or they had a moratorium on that. And that was for the salvation of that guy's property. And so strange things in this industry for whatever reason. But I want to talk about SAM for a moment. I think it's important. I heard about financing or the amount of money the companies make. I know there's business people in this room, but I bet there's not one that would raise their hand to a single-digit internal rate of return, except for me. Okay? There isn't a fat hog in solar anymore. Maybe one day, or a long time ago, there might have been, but there isn't. And then there's other things drawing at it. There's expectations of everybody. And it only takes really one person that wants overpaid to kill a project. Could be the school, could be the county, could be the town, could be the landowner, could be anyone. Could be the guy building it. But I do agree with the fact that we do bring jobs to the town, and when we are finished, it has to be maintained. That's always done locally. We own and operate in 18 states, and we're always working with local talent to get it done. and we're dedicated. That's the other thing I think is very important. At the end of 25 years at 0.5% degradation, it's still operating more than 85% efficiency. And we look at the project as having a 35-year useful life, so there's lots that can be done. That solar array is still quite productive. So you don't have to do certain things, you're not forced to do certain things in terms of removing it, but we always have decommissioning plans as part of what we do, and we're very responsible. I also think the last thing I'll say is that when you build things, you can build them well, or you can build them cheap. And cheap doesn't always perform. Anybody has any machinery or an automobile, when it's built right, when it's designed right. And I think ultimately we have to design the quintessential solar project, built in a quintessential way, maintained in a quintessential way, to hopefully get to some financial reality that we agreed to upfront. And these projects 2-3 years down the road, so many of these incentives, and what has really tanked New York, quite honestly, because you know, the reader program, there's other challenges on the solar side, is that incentives just get down, down to little ball of dust. And that was the project. And that's because of incentives. It costs you on up right now for equipment and all that, for steel, for aluminum, all the things that go into it. You know, look at what just happened recently. So there's challenges on the solar side, but one thing I would leave you with is if you can work with a company like Standard Solar that is a company of integrity, we're the kind of company that will be here. We're owned by a utility called Energeer, and we're fully dedicated to long-term ownership and operation of these systems. So I think I leave you with, there's only a limited amount of area you can do this in, because if you get too far away from that interconnection point, it gets too expensive to run a wire, usually about $1 million a mile, and that just kills the project. So if you can look at specifically where this is being proposed, because it isn't everywhere, it's just specific locations, that may help. And appreciate the opportunity to speak here this evening. If anything, I think I've seen 60% be a good coverage, and most of the things I hear tonight are visual. So if it's not being seen by neighbors or visual impairment, it doesn't really matter what the percentage is. So, but thank you for the opportunity to speak, and appreciate it very much.
Thank you for your comments. Todd Lloyd. Anybody on Zoom? Next individual is Jim Hoover.
Question I have to the board is, we're all concerned about ag lands, but do we do anything to try to create ag lands? And this is just a question. I mean, if all we're ever gonna do is take away from the ag lands, then it's obviously gonna all go away eventually. But we have the parcel of 208 acres across the street on Reynolds Road that is private farmlands. And why would you support solar there and not want to make that ag district? But what we have is we have 2 or 3 different ways that these things are being approached. My wife and I, our farm is sitting in the middle of the Killians on one side, the golf course on the other side. So they're trying to surround us with solar. But we have 2 different approaches. The Killians they want to work with us. They called, they asked, you know, if we put it here, would this be good? Would this be acceptable? The large company across the street, they don't even want to talk about it. They just want to come in and they want to blast the whole parcel, the entire piece there. So I think that, you know, one of the things that's been brought up tonight I wasn't aware of is how restricted and how few projects we really can have. And if we can only have those few projects in that little bit of area, why don't we just evaluate them on a case-by-case basis? Why do we have to try to put a blanket law over the whole thing? We're only talking, Mr. Burns said, I think 4 projects, right? Maybe. We're talking 4 or 5 projects is what we're talking, solar projects. Why don't we just evaluate each of those projects on its merit and not try to put a blanket law over the whole thing that covers areas that aren't even gonna be, they're not even in consideration because they don't have 3-phase or they don't have a transfer station. So I think that we can throw this whole law out and evaluate each project on its own merits. Thanks.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Kathy, Brown, 301 Sulphur Road. You're declining?
No, I'm not gonna walk.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Tom Moore.
Tom Rourke,
You don't like that?
301 Southwood Road, the Farmer State Road. So I'm here to help support him along with myself. One of the main disjustices, if this goes through, is I'd say to our youth, my children's age, they're all coming back and buying land in this area because they grew up. All our kids' friends grew up next door in a hayloft, in a stream. And actually, John, my niece just bought 17 acres from next door to John. The Stewart family's son just bought 20 some odd acres, the border of my land. And that was at one time off farm, along with across the street. Now, they're doing it because that's how they grew up and that's what they'll enjoy, and they're all coming back, paying their taxes, and putting up with really expensive houses. And they have a solar farm come up right next door to my property, which is their property, basically. Have a chain link fence go up, and, biggest problem we had for years around here is having workable comps for real estate. Now our youth is coming back and fixing that, encouraging other people to come back and develop nicely under your supervision. And, it's just a major injustice. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have expired list that I have. Is there anybody else?
You missed my question mark.
Pardon?
You missed my question mark.
I'm sorry, Gary Morris. Slight oversight. We saved the best for last.
Well, I'm sure that means you're speaking here because my name is Carrie Morrison Baker. I live at 495 Gainsborough Road. I do not live in the district, but I do have property. My sisters and myself have property. And just to let you know, this is going against my grain and hopefully I don't pass out because if you do, when we were, first of all, I was really shocked by the amount of controversy this thing is bringing in. When I was first approached, the first things out of my mouth was, what kind of damage is it going to do to the property? And people here can tell you that that's true, that that's what I said. And when I was raised, we had 300 acres between two different farms on two different sections. And when my father passed away, it's been sort of distributed. And we have one little parcel left, it's 80 acres. And unfortunately, this one is a unique character because we have the railroad tracks on one side and the railroad company took out the crossing, so we cannot get across legally into the property. Then we have other neighbors, so if we wanted to actually work it, we have to get easements and permissions and pay money to actually cross the properties. We did try for a few years to rent it out, and it rented, and we just asked for taxes. And then all of a sudden they said, no, we don't want it too much, it's too much for what we get. So now I have land that has not been worked in probably 4 or 5 years. We have taken some logs off of it, but again, we had to get permission from people to cross because we also have a culvert going, big crevice going through that. So we'd have to get like 2 different easements to get into our 2 different parcels, which is really just one. Anyway, when we heard this, it's not just me, it's also my 3 sisters. We thought it was a godsend. It's like, do you realize what this could do for us? Me, I'm okay with money, but I have 3 sisters that can really use the benefits from this. And with it not being constructive to the property, I think it's great. Sorry. Anyway, my sisters would make a good benefit from it. Yes, it's not gonna be a ton of money, but it's enough to maybe make it so that they're not on the poverty level, because one of them actually is. Anyway, I really wish that this solar, farm would go through. And, that's all I can say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. I believe I've expired the list of Adele Curtis.
I don't take it personally that you forgot my name. Thank you. My name is Adele Kurtz. I live at 11 Snowberry Lane. I grew up in the Ag District, but I do not currently.
I'm sorry, could the cross conversation go out in the halls so everybody has the same respect while we're speaking?
I grew up in the Ag District, but I do not currently live there. My property abuts up next to it in Snowberry Lane. You've heard at least two polarizing presentations today. On the one hand, you have those people in the community who oppose the installation of commercial electrical generating operations in the Ag District. On the other hand, you have those who are seeking to protect their perceived property rights. And I say perceived property rights because property rights in the town of Monroe all come with certain restrictions. The town has laws which regulate what you can and cannot do under laws on your property. There's setbacks, there's height restrictions, there's already a number of restrictions of what you can and cannot do. I urge you today to take the emotional pleas and the personal stories out of the equation when considering this proposed law. Instead, rely on the facts. And I ask you to balance those two seemingly different and polarizing positions. It can be done, but it'll likely require compromise from both positions. If at the end of this hearing, when it eventually closes, neither side walks out and says, wow, we won that one, then you have met this goal and you have achieved a balance in this law. The facts that I'm asking you to consider can be found in the town's governing documents. We can all agree that the New York State Constitution recognizes the importance of preservation and conservation of our state's natural resources and scenic beauty. This can be found in Article 14, Section 4. This is the so-called Conservation Bill of Rights, and it specifically states that it is the state's policy to protect agricultural lands. A reminder, I think you heard it today, you are all charged and swore an oath to protect and uphold the New York State Constitution when you took these positions. The second fact I ask you to keep in mind that the Town of Monroe Comprehensive Plan was adopted after a comprehensive cross-section of various community members contemplated the future of the town of Monroe. On page 65 of that comprehensive plan, it outlines some of the goals as they're related to our agricultural resources. And these goals include, but are not limited to, protecting the farmland and open spaces. Our farmland serves a dual benefit because it provides open spaces that contribute to the rural feel of this town while also serving an economic benefit by supporting crop production. Another goal is to maintain the presence of the agricultural district as well as the protection it affords farmers and growers in our town. And yet another goal, but certainly not the last goal of this document, specifically requires the restriction of development on prime farmland soils and soils of statewide importance where possible. Page 85 of the same document, it recommends that agricultural resources, clearly recommends saving agriculturally viable soil from development whenever possible. I would ask you to take those two governing laws into consideration when looking at the proposed law. There is also the Town of Monroe Farmland Protection Plan. This was also developed with participation from several stakeholders and with townwide workshops, meetings, and surveys completed by our farmers. you have a right to farm law. And each of these documents provides you, the town board, with guidance necessary to make an informed decision. Each of these was developed with substantial input from rural residents, including many of us who are here tonight who participated in those. But I'd like to turn to the proposed law. As drafted, commercial electrical generating companies would be permitted in M1 and M2 zones and agricultural districts. Taken from our town code, the M1 zone provides for the maintenance and expansion of heavy industry and large-scale manufacturing. M2 allows for the establishment of light manufacturing industry or storage uses. R5, as stated earlier, the R5 district encompasses the bulk of agricultural land in this town and is to promote, enhance, and protect agriculture by limiting the development. I have one more statement. I asked the town, when considering this, why in the world would we include the agricultural district within the proposed land? But I'm not naive. I know politicians and rural politicians are required to take into consideration and possibly compromise. The law as written, my first choice would be to remove the agricultural district from the law. The compromise, however, would be to sustain and keep would be to adopt the law as proposed in order to agricultural land.
So next, now I believe we've expired the list unless anybody who's not on the list would like to speak. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, I'm Casey O'Brien. I live on 200 Burt Road, right on Killian Farm. So I am for solar panels, and you know, I don't know a whole ton, but it just blows my mind that we're telling farmers what they can and can't do with their own land. And you know, we've heard these stories that are emotional and they're pulling on heartstrings, but because these farmers are struggling, not only is the Killian Farm struggling, but there are many others as well. These solar panels will really help these struggling farmers in generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to provide spoken testimony this evening? Is it very brief? Sure.
I was an EW, she spent 30 years in power generation in the industrial construction. There's one cheap power. It all goes to the highest bidder. Guess where that goes? Down the state. New Jersey, New York, and Maine.
Thank you.
So there's a remark.
I'd like to say that
Just
just
please come up to the mic so that we're zooming this, and we want to make sure your important testimony is well heard.
I just would like everybody here tonight on Zoom and the board members to know that the Killian Dairy Farm did apply for development rights back in 2014 before we sold our dairy farm. And Saratoga Plan offered us financial money for one corner of Fedor and Burt, and the rest of the property was not buying the soil for the development rights. We just thought that should be important. We did try.
Thank you very much. So as I indicated prior to opening the public hearing, we will not close it this evening. We'll continue to receive comments, and after future discussions with the board, we'll determine what the next step will be. I expect there will be continued conversation on the draft proposal. At this time, I want to thank the public for the participation. I want to thank you for maintaining decorum on behalf of the board, and hope you have a great evening.
I was wondering about the written comments that were given sent to the town clerk. Usually when we open up, the other public hearings are open up, when we have it, there was any written. Why did we not do that tonight? Are we going to do it? Are we going to do it the next week?
We're required to include in the record any written correspondence that the clerk has received. Officially will be included in the official record.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.